Greetings, this is Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with another Isaac Asimov short story review. Now, this story originally appeared in a magazine called Columbia. Can't find it. That said, fortunately, it was also collected into this gold collection. So, at least we have the story. What differences or artwork I don't know. So, anyway, the story was called Alexander the God and appeared on page 63 in this book. And it's really hard to read there. If they don't care, so I might actually have to look something up. Nothing much to see here either. It's just the story. So what is the story? It's somebody named Alexander Hoskins. And he was just real devoted to computers. And he was doing all kinds of amazing stuff with them by a very young age, making some very fascinating and powerful computers, and even able to come up with ideas you could sell to big computer companies. That one mentions IBM. I guess the assumption was they'd still be in business way in the future. They've had their ups and downs. Maybe they're still around. I'm not sure. Or in some other form. Who knows? But, mergers and acquisitions constantly changing. You never know who or what's going to be in charge 100 years hence. But at any rate, he sells these different developments of the computer. He finds ways to compress astonishing amounts of information in a very small space, and to make the computer powerful enough to be able to assimilate all of this data, go through it all, and find all kinds of stuff. And he gets an ambition. His name is Alexander, and he decides he wants to be a 20th century Alexander the Great, only instead of conquering through war, he's going to conquer, as it were, through financial power. The computer, as it turns out, is being fed all this information, which apparently goes back at least 100 years, of every little twitch the stock market ever made, every stock price that ever went up or down, and everything. And the important part is something about the other sorts of events in business and life in general that would affect the prices of things, and to be able to produce some pretty good correlations between what's going on, what the basic cycles of business and other things are, and so on and so forth, and therefore being able to make very, very good predictions of what will happen in the future. So he's always knowing the right stuff to buy. And after a while, he starts getting larger. He then cooks up ways for making sure that his efforts to start owning huge amounts of stuff are very, very difficult to trace, or maybe even impossible. It would basically take another computer like what he has to figure out what he's done or even who he is. So he gets more and more rich and powerful. His computer becomes more and more powerful. He's got money to invest. He eventually, what had started out as his own apartment, and then he bought it, and then he rented a separate apartment for himself and one just for the computer. And years later, he's bought the entire building and expanded this computer quite impressively to something pretty huge. And he's got this enormous amount of computing power, and he's trying to take over the world. And he has this idea. Well, Alexander the Great ran out of worlds to conquer when he was 30, whatever. And he says, well, I want to do the same thing. When I'm 30, I want to be the very, very richest person on the face of the earth. And I can make anything happen that I want to have happen. And he does get really, really rich. But as he does so, well, a couple of things happen. One, he kind of starts getting ideas about what he wants to do now that he's suddenly running the world, and he has these very specific ideas, and apparently he creates kind of a dictatorship. But the computer, meanwhile, is just grinding away, trying to do whatever it takes to pursue ever more and more power. And the thing is, as more and more power is taken by this computer to make all these great choices in investments and other financial type things, um, you have to take into account more and more different things that affect the economy. And in order to do that, you have to understand these things that create these effects. Well, he runs up against a rather interesting limitation. It's kind of subtle. I'll go ahead and just give it away here. At some point, it becomes clear that the computer itself is a major player in world events and must therefore take its own actions and prospective actions into account, which means it has to have a duplicate of itself in itself, as it were, as part of what it's doing, which once it's done that advanced, then that duplicate needs a duplicate in itself, and you've got a recursion issue here. The smart thing would have been, none of these other effects in history are known perfectly or need be understood perfectly or fully. But, he didn't think of that. His computer didn't think of it. And at some point, the computer just couldn't continue, just broke down, stopped, halted, done, over. So it kind of met up with its own halting problem. So then the world became a free place again. I don't know. Sounds a little like some famous person. Yeah, Bill Gates, I think, is kind of like that. It's like he did a lot of computer stuff. He didn't exactly do it in investment stories that we know of, but he's got enough computers with enough of everything going on that he actually has managed to create for himself a lot of power. He's kind of making it harder for people to have real freedoms anymore, and he thinks he can control the whole world. And truth to tell, he's probably not all that far from it. I don't know where this is headed. The story, of course, has a happy ending. The guy only gets so far, but that's what he goes from Alexander, the mostly great, to the greatest, and finally he wants to be the god. Alexander the God is the title of the story. So that's what he's beginning to think of himself as he gets towards the end of this progression. Well, it was a cute little story, rather interesting. So it's a decent story, I think, all said and told. And okay, I got a minute. I'll explain a fun moment I had. I was at a relative's wedding a number of years ago, and this little old lady there is one of some guest I didn't know what part of the family she was from, or maybe a friend of somebody, came up to me and she says, "You're Bill Gates, aren't you?" I guess there's something of a resemblance, or maybe that I had at the time, maybe something with my hair or something. I don't know. I kind of looked like him, or maybe I had the same glasses. So, joking with her, I said, "Yeah, but don't tell anyone. I'm here without my security." So she's, "Oh." Had a little fun. Thanks for listening.